Schaefer is an author, a philosopher, a kinesiologist, a counsellor and a natural therapist. Brian has spent 30 years passionately researching health, healing and spirituality. Brian is a very profound guy. You're really going to enjoy his insights, his perceptions of consciousness, of spirituality, of energy, and he will take you on a journey into what he's going to offer today, which is understanding the true relationship between the soul and the ego. Brian will explain how we came to be caught in the current paradigm and how we can shift back to our soul path both individually and collectively, and also how to connect to our inner guidance. I'm really looking forward to this one because Brian also has got a lot to share, and he really is a pioneer at the forefront of human consciousness, so you'll really enjoy the journey we're about to go on with him. Please make welcome Brian Schaefer.
Can everybody hear me okay? No? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Excellent. Well, wasn't Jane great? Hopefully I'll be able to follow on from him a bit. My name's Brian Schaefer. I'm a holistic natural therapist, as Anthony just said. I've been doing this work for 35 years all around the world. And it started from the day I left high school. I've wanted to find the human potential. And I've sort of spent every waking hour since November 1983 looking for not just my potential but to be able to live and share it with everybody. And I'll give you a bit of a background as to how and why I came to be where I'm at today. I had a bit of a rough start to life. My mother nearly miscarried when I think I was about 6 months. And then I had a very, very difficult delivery. I was born jaundiced. Then I nearly died of gastro soon after. And as a result of the problems that I had with my digestive system, the other thing was my mother had mastitis and I didn't get breastfed. So my digestive system was very troubled to start with, so that left me with a lot of food allergies and food intolerances. And it made me what they said was hyperactive, which is now ADHD. And so I was very out of control. So by the age of 4.5, I'd had 3 serious head injuries. And the third one actually gave me a cranial injury, a brain injury, and it gave me what they call acquired savant syndrome. And that's where you have gifts, but at the same time, due to the injury, I had severe disabilities, including dyslexia. So on top of the ADHD, I then had dyslexia. So I went all the way through school struggling. No, it never got picked up. So at the end of school, I was very disheartened, and I just basically said, I'm not interested in anything to do with the world. And I went on my own journey. And I had a very, very intense experience up until I was probably 22. And I'll share with as much as I can in the next 45 minutes. I actually have never presented this material before. So I've just recently changed my whole approach to everything. So this is the first time, so bear with me. We'll see how we go. I don't know whether it's going to take an hour or 20 minutes, but we'll know at the end of this.
It's going to take 45 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, it should, yeah. So when I left high school, I went into overcompensation mode. I wanted to actually go and find my true mastery. So I got involved with martial arts, motor racing and all the extreme sports. I used to roll cars for fun, and by the age of 22 I'd had massive injuries. I broke my back 3 times and really smashed my body up. And where it really all started in a particular moment when I was 19, I used to race karts. And I had a high-speed accident due to the fact that I lost concentration. And in the moment I lost concentration, I felt the disconnect between my mind and body. And I had a high-speed accident. But as I was spinning out of control, I captured the moment. I thought, I was looking for mastery. A lot of people thought I was a perfectionist, but I was actually seeking self-mastery. So I really took this accident to heart. And I said to my martial arts instructor what happened, and I said, how do you actually connect the mind and body? How do I actually focus and concentrate? And he told me something that's very simple but very profound, and he said it starts with the breath. The breath is what connects the mind and body. So the instant that he told me that, he showed me how to breathe, and I read dozens and dozens of books. Even though I was dyslexic, I managed to read them. And over the years, I put together a technique that I could then continue practicing. So then when I was 20, I collapsed during martial arts training, and one of my training buddies said his mother had just been to a naturopath, so I should go and check him out. So I did. I walked in there and I instantly fell in love with the herbal dispensary and the iridology charts on the wall, and have him look in my eye and tell me everything about it, about myself. So I swore at the time I would do whatever it took to master exactly what this guy knew. And he was a master of what he did. And I'd focused as much as I could on that. So I studied every single healing modality I could... I'll get back to that. Every healing modality I could study. So when I started studying the breath, I came to realise that the breath is not just what keeps us alive. It's what actually helps us connect on every level of our being. It controls our physical state, our mental emotional state, and our spiritual connectedness. So when you actually talk about stillness, emptiness and silence, it's actually when you hold the breath out and wait for the breath to come in, and then you breathe in, hold the breath in, and then you breathe out and hold the breath out relaxed. So that's when you can attain stillness, emptiness and silence. Whereas when you hold the breath in, that's when you can consolidate on your thoughts. Right? So I breathe about 5 to 10 times a minute. Most people breathe 12 to 30 times a minute. So most people are just breathing in and out like this. And the range of breath is very narrow, which equals stress. So when I went on travelling around the world when I was 25, the yogis in India helped me master this. And they said, all disease is just an inappropriate breathing pattern given the situation. Right? So I focus a lot on the breath. Ever since that martial arts instructor told me about the breath, I've been focusing on every breath that I've had since then, because I knew the importance of it. And then when I got to India, the master said to me, you've mastered the breath, now you've got to tune into the heartbeat. So when you hold the breath out, you can actually drop into a deeper level of consciousness and feel the heartbeat, and that's when you really connect with your heart. Okay? So as I was travelling around the world, I studied all the different healing modalities. But what happened was when I was 22, I was speeding home from work one day. I was being a racing car driver. I used to drive excessively fast on the roads everywhere. But because I knew how the intuitive process worked, I never got booked. But one particular day I was speeding home and I realised how unfulfilled I was. Even though I'd had everything I'd ever wanted to have, done everything I'd ever wanted to do, I wasn't fulfilled. I was very satisfied and very content, but I didn't have any peace or fulfilment. And this really troubled me because I was working 2 jobs, working really hard to succeed, but there was that really deep unfulfillment. And one of the problems with a head injury is it gives people their tendency to be suicidal. So I was suicidal most of my life as a result of the childhood injuries. And I had a downturn in my life when I was 22 when I became suicidal. And I had a divine intervention. I had a gun to my head and this being appeared and told me, wake up to myself, and I did. And then 6 months later, I had another experience. I was speeding home from work again, late at night. This being appeared in the car and told me to slow down just a little bit. And if I didn't listen, I would have been in a fatal accident. The car came up the wrong side of the road as I was coming onto it. And so that was twice in 6 months. And it was like, what the hell? I was suicidal, but I had 2 interventions that kept me here. And maybe today is the reason why I'm still here. So this being that appeared to me, he stayed with me for 2.5 years, and in the end I ended up travelling to India and I met him in the flesh. I had no idea he was actually a living being. So I stayed with there was 9 masters altogether. From 91 to 98 I was in India, backwards and forwards, and they really sorted me out. I call it boot to bum therapy. And they were supernatural beings, and they were sort of like, if you want the truth, bang, there it is on the chin. And I welcomed that. So it all started from realising how unfulfilled I was, but also while I was in India I realised that it's not just me that was feeling unfulfilled and lacking peace, it was everybody. And I had that moment when I was nearly shot by a soldier. I won't go into the story, but in the moment when I thought I was about to die, I realised that everybody was wanting to fulfil their potential, and it wasn't just me having this push to fulfil my potential. So I went on to study everything I could about healing, because internally I was really, really disturbed. Like I couldn't control my thoughts, even though I did the breathing and that sort of stuff. I hadn't yet realised how to actually have the physical health, just changing my diet and everything like that. So what I did is I went to India and I basically retired there, and then I had an epiphany on Easter Sunday 1998 that I needed to share what I've been doing since. And I came back to study, and then I just realised I needed to write a book. 80% of my clients, I'm a practitioner, are doctors, practitioners and therapists, and they don't actually have a model of the holistic picture. So the more I practiced, the more I realised that people don't know how to work holistically. So I developed a model that became a book. It's called The Nature of Life. And in the model I have 12 aspects, and within these aspects there's spiritual, physical, chemical, biological, mental, emotional, dietary, nutritional, biochemical, neurological, bioenergetic, sociological, environmental and material. These 12 aspects are every single thing that influences every level of your being. Right, so you can put this diagram, it's a dodecangle, as Jane was just talking about, so you've got 12 around the one, okay? So this is the point of singularity. So how it works is if you get physically traumatised, it affects every other aspect of your being. If you get chemically poisoned, it affects every other aspect of your being. So every aspect can be the cause of disease as well as it can be a healing modality. You can have chiropractic or say antidepressants or probiotics or Reiki and acupuncture. Every single aspect has a healing spin to it. So when you look at how this works, it's actually holographic and fractal. So inside each aspect, the whole thing appears again. Right? So this is the foundation of the model that I've since written a 600-page book on. So it shows every single influence in your life. So in a disease state, it breaks down to this, where there's only, instead of 132 lines, there's only 60. And all the arrows are going outside of what appears real, right? So there's 6 causes of disease. There's deficiency, which then causes excess, which then causes a deficit, which then causes an overload, which then causes a depletion, which then causes a collapse, which then leads to death. And along the way we have compensations, overcompensations and self-destruction, which is all the self-sabotage. So what I'll do is I'll share this model so we then can apply it to how to empower yourself. Everything I'm sharing is about self-empowerment, but if we don't understand the factors that's involved, right, we won't be able to understand how to stop doing the things we know we shouldn't be and start doing the things we know we should be. Right, I've been doing this for 32 years and nearly everybody without exception has admitted to me that they can't stop doing the things they know they shouldn't be and can't start doing the things they know they should be. So we're going to remedy that today, because if we can't do that, guess what? We can't shift paradigm. Right? So the dominant force within this will always win. What we're mainly dealing with is the original deficiency of everything. So this will make sense the further I go into it. So just keep all this in mind as we go. So this is a diagram that that Jane just presented, so you understand the nested tori. So when you look at how this dodecangle evolves, it starts off with a 12 and then it all evolves into a nested tori. It also regresses into the oblivion. So here is the mergence, where everything just merges, and there it just ends up to a state of oblivion. So I'll be revisiting each part of this as we go. So there's 6 components of information. Just so as we're very clear, one of the masters I spent time with in India, he got at me for being specific and not exact. Everything I talk about is exact. So to be able to communicate things exactly, we need to have a language. So the first part of my book is just creating a language so I can be very exact with what I'm saying. If we can do that, then there's no room for conflict or confusion. So you'll see how I keep expanding on this as we go. So there's what, when, how, where, why and who. So there's also 6 questions that are associated with that. There's what do you ultimately want? If I said to you, what do you ultimately want? And then when do you want it? Where do you ultimately want it? Who do you ultimately see yourself to be, and who do you ultimately want to be with? Why do you want what you want? And then how do you attain and maintain all that you want? You don't want to actually attain it all and then not maintain it. So the first question is, we all ultimately seek a potential. If there's a potential in life, I claim it. right? So do you all agree that there is a potential in life? Yeah? So do you also agree that there's a purpose? Yeah? So do you all agree that peace is the true measure of our success? And if we're at peace, we're actually moving closer towards our potential and purpose. So the masters I spent time with, they were very black and white. And the question is, are you at peace, yes or no? And if you're not at peace, then you're not living in true harmony with the nature of life, which happens to be the title of my book. Right? So everything I'm talking about is exactly how to attain the peace. Right? So would you agree that peace is our natural state? So if we're not at peace, then everything we know and understand about ourselves and life isn't serving us to live the truth right here, right now. Do you agree? Okay. So do you also agree that there's a collective potential? Yeah? And you also agree that there's a collective purpose? Right? So if everybody's on the same page, speaking the same language, we might get somewhere. So there's 6 reality check questions just to gauge how close we are to having the ultimate experience of life on earth. The first question is, are you genuinely happy and healthy and truly at peace, yes or no? The next question is, how many people do you know or have you met that are genuinely happy and healthy? The next question is, what percentage of things in your life is getting better and moving towards your ultimate experience on earth? The next question is, what percentage of things in the world overall, from your perspective, is moving towards our ultimate experience on earth? And keep in mind, things are getting better, staying the same, or getting worse. And I've asked these questions to thousands of people around the world, and most people say, my life is hell and it's getting worse. It may not be your experience, right? I said this to one of my rich relatives, and they said, oh, Brian, don't get caught up in all that doom and gloom. I said, it's not doom and gloom, it's the reality of what people come to me as a practitioner and what I've seen on the streets around the world. People aren't doing very well out there. Right? So if we're in the position to be able to change paradigm, we need to know exactly how to do that. So the next question is, what percentage of your true potential have you fulfilled? And how many people do you know or have you met that have fulfilled their true potential? Right, so it's indicative of the fact that most people say to me that they're only in single digits of their potential, and they actually still don't really know what the purpose of life is. Okay? So if I said to you, what do we all ultimately want or need? Right? Because of the state of the world, and nearly everybody agrees with me, everything's going in the wrong direction. What we really need is a shift of paradigm. Right? Funny that. So we need to know exactly how we can do that individually and collectively. Like everybody that's been speaking, what we need to be able to do is put it all together and into something that's very practical. And this is what I'm going to show you today. So we need to know exactly how. So it's the lack of true knowledge of how which has created the current paradigm. So to shift paradigm, we need to do the complete opposite to what we are doing, right? If I say to people, if you want to know where I'm coming from, look at what the world's doing and do the complete opposite. So to define the nature of our paradigm, we have to be able to look at the dualities of it. There's actually a conscious paradigm and a dualistic paradigm. So society wants to keep everything as a grayscale, but it's actually really black and white. Sorry, I'm just a bit dehydrated. I've been sitting here in the aircon. So it's all very black and white. Everyone in society wants to keep things as a grayscale, because when it's grayscale, you're not empowered. Whereas if it gets very black and white, then you can go, okay, it's either this way or that way. And like I said, most of my clients are practitioners, and one naturopath said to me, the problem with you is everything's black and white. Well, that's actually a relief if you know that. You know, there's no mental gymnastics about whether you should or shouldn't do something. I'm not used to aircon. So, all right. So we'll just go through the what, when, how, where, why, and who of each of the paradigms, just very quickly. When you look at what a conscious and dualistic paradigm is, the dualistic paradigm is full of the artificial, synthetic, imitation, fake, and so on. All good, bad, positive, negative. And all the virtues and emotions have degrees, like there's degrees of satisfaction, contentment, respect, consideration, and success. But on the conscious paradigm, everything's natural, organic, genuine and authentic, And all the divine qualities are all or nothing. There's no degrees of peace. There's no degrees of fulfillment. There's no degrees of reverence and honour and wholeness. It's either one or the other. Yeah? So it's already refreshing to know that it is one or the other, because you can instantly know whether somebody's presenting something that's dualistic or conscious. So when you look at the nature of it all, you're either having an experience within consciousness or you're having an experience of consciousness. There's a very distinct difference. So when you look at when, the dualistic paradigm keeps you stuck in the past, projecting into the future, talking about an afterlife. You know, if you're Christian, it's always delaying delaying your potential till after you die, or past lives. And this is the time-space continuum. In the conscious paradigm, it's right here and now. In each present moment, it's forever, and it's eternal, and it's the space-time continuum. If anybody's done plant medicines, when you leave your body, you go from the time-space continuum into the space-time continuum. Right? It's very different. When you talk about where, most people want to be somewhere else other than where they're at. They're not empowered to actually just be fully present. And within that, they're in pursuit of their dreams and fantasies, or they've got their ideal place that they may one day get to. Within the conscious paradigm, you're here or wherever you are in each moment, and you're embracing the omnipresence. With who, you've got the ego identity, and most people are just living as their parents' child. They've never actually outgrown all the energy signatures that they got born with. And you've got the compensated personality, role identification and status orientation. Here you've got being a sovereign soul, conscious personality, enlightened self, and you're connecting with the divine spirit within the all. And why? This is very interesting because most people are stuck in this state of reason, and why they do what they do is they're trying to prove their worthiness or deservedness either to themselves or somebody else, or they're trying to assert their right or permission to be here. Right? And when I've travelled around the world studying human behaviour, it's very interesting that when you see toddlers, they go through that stage where they go, yeah, but why? Right? Why? You're asking, oh, your kitten got killed on the road. Why? Oh, because God wanted to take it to heaven. Why? Right? And it's why everywhere. It's not why in India and how in America and when in Africa. It's always why, because we're not consciously born with the innate knowledge of why we're here. So when you look at it, why is all about purpose. When we're actually disconnected from that purpose, we start acting with all the left brain in terms of the reason in pursuit of success, right? Trying to become what we already are. You cannot become what you already are. We're here to be all that we are. But the thing is when you look at the state of the world, that's clearly not working. Right? Everyone's still like a hamster on the wheel trying to get somewhere, trying to get to be successful. And then they'll be able to alienate and isolate themselves and insulate themselves from all the pressure and the stress, and then they'll be at peace. Right? I had a multi-millionaire world champion athlete come to see me recently. He was very satisfied and very content, but when I said to him, "Are you at peace?" he said no. Even though he could go anywhere and do anything with he and his family, there was no peace. Right? So it doesn't actually really mean anything. So the question is, we need to know how. We need to actually transcend all the belief in struggle and pressure and stress. And I have a saying, everyone's helping each other with their problems, but they're not serving them to live the truth. If what we're actually doing was working, everybody would be happy, everybody would be healthy, everybody would be living their potential with a sense of purpose. But as on the front line as a practitioner and presenting seminars and workshops, I'm yet to find anybody other than the 9 masters I spent time with in India who are truly empowered. And they actually were very brutal with me, and they said, until you can actually transmit that empowerment and truth to others, then you're just adding to the problem. Right? So I've got a lot of conviction around this, because until everybody's empowered, I can't go back to being on the beach in India. I'm not saying I'm a saviour or anything, but because we're all one, I can't be at peace knowing that people are desperately wanting to know what I've always known. Yeah? So with the conscious paradigm, it's all effortless. It's fun, creative, and the one word that's lacking in the world is reciprocity. It very rarely comes up, but it's where life really starts. That's a true community. So in the dualistic paradigm, Everyone's trying to secure freedom to get everything that they think they want and need. In the conscious paradigm, you're liberated to be all that you already are. It's knowing how to bring that out of you, right? So consciously knowing exactly how is the only way to shift paradigm. If we don't know exactly how, and I'm yet to find anybody who is consciously aware other than the 9 masters, and if you saw the talk that I did with Anthony about how the intuition works, I'm yet to find anybody who knows exactly how to do that. And the Tibetan masters said that if you don't know how the intuitive process works, you're simply not empowered, which means if you don't have a conscious connection to the forces within yourself, you can't have a connection with anything or anyone else outside of yourself. Yeah? Because everybody able to hear me? Am I speaking loud enough? Okay. So knowing how is the only way we're going to be truly at peace. But then the next question is it inevitable that you fulfill your true potential and purpose? Yes or no? Right? If you don't feel that, you've got work to do. And you need to hang around people who are living with that true sense of potential and purpose. But what I'm sharing with you today is not just helping you get a better understanding and knowledge of it, it's actually to bring it into conscious awareness so you can consciously act on it. So knowing how to be knowing how to align with the inevitable is giving you a deeper sense of peace. If you don't feel the inevitability of it, then you'll still have room for doubt, judgment and question and that sort of thing. So the other thing is knowing that it's inevitable for everybody gives you the deepest sense of peace. Right? Despite appearances, we're actually all on track. Right? You just have to put aside your own conditioning and programming to actually go, oh yeah, I can actually see beyond this. So the percentage that you feel the inevitability unfolding is the depth of peace that you feel. Does that make sense? There's degrees of hope, faith and trust. Right? The degree of hope is getting what you want. Hope is getting what you want. Faith is getting what you need. Trust is actually fulfilling your potential and purpose. So if you feel it's inevitable, you'll have full faith, hope and trust. So why have we all gone so wrong? This is the question that needs to be asked. Again, why? And it goes back to how we're brought up. And this is not through anyone's fault. Right? There's no guilt, shame or blame here at all. So through all the conditioning, programming and indoctrination, why has just been completely overlooked. So how it happens is that all our imagination pathways have been hijacked and filled with fears and fantasies, with fear and desire. Every fear has an equal and opposite desire, and every desire has an equal and opposite fear. So everything in life is plagued with inconsistencies. Everything that keeps us frustrated. The price of fuel, credit cards, everything's going up and down. You never know. Nothing's stable. And then the main thing is our creativity has been suppressed and denied, which makes us turn destructive. Right? We are by nature creative beings. And if we don't know how to tap into our creative energies, all that energy just gets dispersed and gets destructive, right? So this is the most important thing I've realised in the last 35 years is what I'm about to share with you. I'm going to give you a bit of a scenario. There's a little kid, he's artistic, he's very creative, very sensitive, and he goes off to school and he's got ADHD and dyslexic, same as me. But this kid one day sees somebody playing a piano at a musical recital and he goes, oh my God, I want to be able to lose myself in that music. They see somebody playing the music in that state of self-forgetfulness. And he goes, oh my God, I need that experience. And then he runs home from school that afternoon and he says, Mum, I want to learn the piano. But she's a single mum, got 3 children, alcohol dependent, low socioeconomic, and she goes, oh, don't be silly, we don't have money for a piano lesson. Just go outside and play with your brothers. And they're bully brothers, older, they're rugby league family. He goes outside, gets roughed up, and then he gets really disturbed by that, and it's affectionately called the fuck it point. And he goes, I give up. And he goes and watches TV with the kids next door, and their father is on the wrong side of the law. and a very wild childhood family. So he grows up, and by the age of 17 he's in trouble with the law, and then by the age of 24 he's in jail. So if you look at how that all unfolded, right, there's another option where if the mother took a moment of openness and looked at her son and thought, well, hang on a second, there's a church down the road, we'll ask the priest to put a notice up in their bulletin and see if someone will volunteer to teach him the piano lessons for free after school. So sure enough, an old lady volunteers, and every afternoon he goes and learns the piano, and then sometime later the old lady's son comes home, and he's a doctor, and then he continues on. At the age of 24 he becomes a top neurosurgeon. Right? So he could never imagine that the piano lessons were developing the pathways to give him the fine motor skills for him to become a neurosurgeon. Right? So everybody see where this is going? So if I said, so this is the perfect example of the dualistic and conscious paradigm. If I asked the 24-year-old version of this guy in jail, where did you go wrong? And he may think, oh, it might be when I started smoking cigarettes when I was 12, or doing drugs when I was 15, or started doing martial arts and beating people up when I was 17. And he will never be able to trace it back to the point where he got denied the piano lessons. Right? And if I said to the 24-year-old version of himself as a neurosurgeon, what gives you this ability? He would never realise that it was the piano lessons that gave him that connection, the ability to actually do what he needs to do. So you have to keep in mind, when I said before this kid reaches the fuck it point, it could have been the 10th time his soul was denied what it needed to develop and integrate. Right? So when I use the word develop and integrate, if my fingers develop fully, then they can integrate into this. Right? So if he's got all these gifts, talents and skills that he wanted to develop, if they don't integrate, he won't be able to experience his true potential as a surgeon. Okay? So if I said to you, what do you ultimately want? If you could step through a door, shift paradigm, and you are a supernatural being, you can do whatever you want, just create and do whatever you want, what would you do? And I treat people who have never stopped to think about that. And the reason why this is so important is I had a lady come to see me, she was almost about to die with breast cancer, and I said, what would you do? And she says, I don't know, I've never stopped to think about it. And I said, if you don't stop and think about this, it will kill you. And she said, I'd like to play the piano. And again, exactly what do you want to play? What type of music do you want to compose? And she said what she wanted to play. And then she goes, and then I said, okay, that's good, what else? And then she goes, oh, well, I'd probably, like to do, make flower arrangements or something. And I said, okay, that was good, what else? And then she couldn't see the importance of what I was saying. And I said, look, there's something that you need to do. I see auras, and she wasn't lighting up. And I said to her, there's something you need to really connect with. And she was quite feisty, and she didn't really see the importance of where I was going. And then she started to cry, and she goes, I know what it is I want to do. And I said, what is it? And she said, ballroom dancing. And I said, when was the last time you went ballroom dancing? And that's when she just went into a complete meltdown. So she said, the night of my 21st birthday. So she hadn't been ballroom dancing from 21 to 53, and it was killing her. It was actually eating away at her inside. And the breasts are what nature gives us to nurture each other, right? And ourselves. So she was self-destructing. So what's the most fun and creative thing you could ever imagine doing? Right? This is what we have to imagine bringing into the earthly plane. And you have to be exact with it. Exactly what do you want to do? Right? What's the most fun thing you can do? Fun equals creativity. We have to access our pure creative genius within ourselves, express it spontaneously with room for improvisation. Improvisation is the key to growth. Okay? So we need to know exactly how. We need to nature, nurture and nourish. So it's like, we're like a tree. We need a top-down and bottom-up experience. So this is where we need the spiritual connection, and we also need everything to nurture us from the bottom up. How to pay the bills and the 5 basic needs. So there's 6 soul elements. This is the key part of what I share now. is that you need to know exactly what makes you you, and why you have a favourite number, and why you have a favourite colour, and why you like to play the piano and not the trumpet. This is what makes you you. So there's 6 soul elements. There's urges, skills, talents, passions, gifts and purpose. Now this is where the mathematics comes into it. If you look at it, you need at least 6 within the first 5. Right? So this is all explained in my book, exactly what each of them are. So this creates a 30-lane highway to your potential. Your potential is there. You just need to get on track with it. Like, most people are on track to success, but they're not on their path to fulfillment and peace. Okay? So the meaning and purpose of life, if we look at the essence of that, the meaning of life is to have fun. And fun is to fulfill our creative potential. If you haven't fulfilled your creative potential, if you die, you're going to die unfulfilled with regret. The purpose of life is to share that fun with as many people as possible. Right? How good's that? How many people are actually having fun in life? Very, very few. So the ultimate fulfillment is to share that fun, share in the creative potential with every last man, woman and child on the planet. And you have to understand and accept that it is inevitable that we actually do have that experience. There's an infinite number of timelines, and we have to find that one thread within consciousness where that becomes a reality. And we need to know exactly how to do that. So here's the nested TORI that Jane was just talking about. So what I ask people to do is think about the highest and purest thing that they're aware of. What's the highest vibrational state that you can get to, either in meditation or with ayahuasca? It's what I call your leading edge. So this is the spin, and then there's a leading edge, but there's also the lowest vibration that you have, which is how bad things could get. You know, if worst comes to worst, how low do you go? And I affectionately call this the comet tail. So there's all points in between. This might be a good day, this might be a bad day, on average, right? But we need to be aware of what's the comet tail. So the question is, you might be balancing and you might be seeking a potential towards emergence, but if you're stuck in a state of disease, then you may be regressing. So you need to know if your comet tail is at suffering and your leading edge is at empowerment, how do you close the gap? Exactly how do you close the gap? Right? Get all your energies on the leading edge. So it's actually quite simple. Once you know exactly what the comet tail consists of and what does the leading edge consist of. If you zoom in onto the comet tail, the worst state that you can be in, what do you think you would find there? You would see all the pain, all the confusion, all the suffering, all the torment, all the emotions, all the darkness. But like Brandon Bay's work, what happens if you go through it? Right? What you find at the tip of the comet tail, and this is a comet tail of not just your individual cells, but of humanity. I'm looking at the comet tail of humanity, and what I found was just a seed that didn't germinate. One of the seeds of the soul. So in the absence of that light of the soul, all the darkness appears. Does that make sense? So there's nothing bad. Like darkness has no form or substance of its own. It's only the absence of light. It's the fact that all your soul elements got overlooked, that you didn't develop into a whole being, and you're no longer empowered. So you're not a living example. So there's 3 basic types of change. There's old, new and familiar. So when you put them together, there's 9. I won't go into all the details of them, but you can go and buy a new piece of antique furniture which is new old, or you can go and see your old hometown and see people that you're familiar with, right? So there's all these combinations. So this is what stimulates the change and the growth within people. So to maximise your paradigm shift, you need to nature, nurture, nourish the soul elements, and how you do that is with new. Right? What the question is, what have you always wanted to do but you've never done? Therein lies the answer. I asked this to an 86-year-old woman one day when I was working with her, and she burst into tears and put her hands over her eyes and she said, "Brian, don't ask me to think about that." I said, "I'm not just going to ask you to think about it, I want you to go away and do it." Right? You can't die, you know, like this lady. As far as I know, that lady who went off ballroom dancing is still alive. You have to put back what was missing. It's that initial deficiency. Right? The reason why she wants the ballroom dancing is her soul is here to share the light through those through those activities. So it's the new which stimulates both the comet tail and the leading edge and every point in between. Right? This is why life's so boring for everybody. You know, there's no new. So the more you go away and do the things you love and embrace the things that you've missed out on, like it took me 2 years to get to the bottom of my comet tail when I was in India and find out exactly what it is that was missing. 2 whole years. But now that you know how to do it, you could probably do it in 20 minutes. You sit there and write out all your soul elements and it'll put you on path and everything is incrementally getting closer to it. So exactly what do you need to do? You need to find the new, these ones here, which again is what, when, how, where, why and who. Exactly what do you want? Exactly where do you want to go? Exactly who do you want to meet? Right? To bring out the true potential within who you are. And until you actually know that, it's going to be like piñata, you know? So the question is how? This is the ultimate path of peace. Everybody's wanting their purpose. But how are you going to fulfill your purpose if you're not fulfilling your potential? You can't fulfill your potential if you're not in your natural state, which again is balance. You have to start at least, until you can actually maintain your balance, you're not going to find your potential and then find your purpose. Now here's the trick, which is where a lot of people stop liking me. The only way you can attain and maintain a state of balance is through purity. And again, there's no degrees of purity. Until you've got pure diet, pure company, pure environment, which means everything's natural, everything's organic, you're not going to shift out of the dualistic paradigm into the conscious paradigm. Does that make sense? So now here's the thing, our purpose is to merge, which is where everybody actually is on the same exact path. So your individual purpose is serving the bigger purpose, and your purpose may be helping somebody purify, find and maintain balance, find and maintain their potential, or find and maintain their purpose. Right? Make sense? So the individual becomes the collective, but the only way we're going to do this is if we do it together. Right? Everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. Having been brought up as their parent's child, we have to bring out our souls to the surface. I'll just quickly show you this. With your writing finger, do a number 6 in the air and a big circle with the foot at the same time, like this. All right? How many people are able to do that? So if you just stop, right, hands up who could do it, right? Make sure it's going clockwise with your foot, right? So once more. Now just stop. What you all just did, everybody who couldn't do it, is why you're like a hamster on the wheel, right? Because you need to slow down and just take it each moment as it comes. Right? Most people are just too impatient. But if I tell you that, if you imagine that there's a clock here and it's increments and there's a clock there and you do it in increment, you just go at the speed where you get it right the first time. Right? Life is not a practice run. Everyone's just rushing, but if you actually just slow down at the speed where you get it right, you'll be at peace knowing that you're not going to stuff up. Right? Does that make sense? So that's where, if you can't self-correct, you'll keep doing the things that you know you shouldn't be. Does that make sense? So if you can't stop doing the wrong things, you're not going to find the right things. Your potential and your purpose is going to forever elude you. Yeah? So the pace of grace, that's the pace of grace. So this is the thing. When I was in India, I got taught to be aware of every breath and every heartbeat. So if you're not aware of the phases of the breath, where you're still and empty and silent, ready to receive the next moment, if the last program's running, you're going to miss the point. You're going to miss the moment. Yeah? So the ultimate how is you follow your intuition. Right? So if you haven't seen the interview I did with Anthony, or if you need to find out the exact details of how to follow your intuition, my book's available. Yeah? So your destiny is inevitable. Right? You have to spend time with people who honour that within you. How many people have come up to you and said, what do you ultimately want? How many? Yeah? Very, very few people can say anybody. This is where we need to start. If we're going to shift paradigm, we need to just stop doing what we're doing and say, oh, is this working for you? No, it's not working for me. I don't know anybody it's working for. So let's work out what we ultimately want. and then work out, honour the fact that the reason why we want what we want is because it's in our natural state. If we know that we've all got our future self beckoning us to embrace that future moment of all the stages along the way, that we can share in the journey, and then we can have fun, and we don't have to keep reinventing wheels and helping each other with our problems. We'll serve each other to live the truth. Yeah? Makes sense? So one of the masters in India, he used to shake his finger at me all the time, and he said, if you unconditionally surrender to the nature of your being and you embrace the inevitability of your potential and purpose, your life is effortless. And the truth is, your effort is to maintain the effortlessness, which is the complete opposite to what the actual current paradigm is saying. You see all this hype, you know, rah, 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 right? It's all effortless. And one of the last things I say in my book, it's a 600-page textbook, is that you know you're living the truth when everything I've just said goes without saying. It's ironic, you know, I wrote a 600-page book just so I can be left in silence. That's the irony of it. Okay? So I think, how are we going for time? 5 minutes was 5 minutes ago? Okay. So thank you for attending. So any questions or comments on that? See, we've got a couple of minutes. I'm very dehydrated here. Any questions or comments? Yes?
How exactly would you define the purity when you say you have to reach purity first?
Purity is like pure diet, free. You have to have organic food. I'm particularly very strict vegan. I don't believe anybody can have a true spiritual connection if you're living off the death of some other animal. Our nature is oneness, bliss and immortality. You're not going to be able to embrace immortality if you're being nourished by death. Yeah. So if it's not organic, don't use it, don't eat it. That's the main thing. But the thing is to find the purity of the fun within yourself. Right? Any other questions? Yeah? Oh, thank you.